Imagine a world where no one ever hummed a simple melody to brighten their day. Picture a birthday party where the candles are blown out in complete silence. No celebratory song marking the moment. Think about a soldier marching into battle without the stirring rhythm of a drum or a bugle's call. Consider religious services, stripped of hymns and chants, leaving only spoken words. Envision how history would be passed down without the aid of epic ballads or folk songs. This is a glimpse into a reality where music was never invented, a world profoundly different from our own in ways that touch every aspect of human existence. Number 10. The sound of silence in celebrations. No more party anthems or wedding marches. Human beings mark significant life events with gatherings, rituals, and celebrations. Across cultures, music is a thread woven deeply into these occasions. Consider weddings, the solemnity of a processional, the joyous outburst of a recessional, the chosen song for a first dance, the background melodies that encourage conversation and mingling at a reception, or the lively tunes that get guests onto the dance floor. In a world without music, these auditory hallmarks would be absent. Wedding processions would occur in silence, or accompanied only by spoken words, or perhaps percussive sounds made by clapping or stomping, if those rhythmic impulses developed independently of melody and harmony. The first dance, if such a tradition even arose without musical accompaniment, would be a silent, perhaps awkward shuffle. Receptions would rely entirely on conversation, food, and visual elements to create a festive atmosphere. Collective euphoria, often sparked by a shared, beloved song at a party, would never materialize. Birthdays, too, would feel profoundly different. The universal ritual of singing "Happy Birthday" as a cake is presented would not exist. Instead, well wishes would be purely spoken or written. The simple unifying act of a group singing together to honor an individual would be missing, potentially altering the focal point of such celebrations. Holiday gatherings, from Christmas to Diwali to Hanukkah, often feature specific songs and carols that evoke tradition and seasonal spirit. Without these, the character of these holidays would change. The sounds of Christmas would not include carols sung by families or played in public spaces. Diwali celebrations would lack the devotional songs, bhajans, or festive film music that often fills the air. Hanukkah would be without its traditional songs passed down through generations. Public festivals and carnivals, which often pulse with live bands, DJ sets, and parades featuring marching bands, would be transformed. The real carnival would be without samba. Mardi Gras parades would lack their distinctive brass bands. Music festivals, by their very definition, could not exist. Large-scale public gatherings meant for joy and communal experience would need to find entirely different ways to generate excitement and a sense of unity. Perhaps there would be a greater emphasis on visual spectacles, like fireworks or light shows, or on participatory spoken word performances, or on synchronized rhythmic clapping or chanting, assuming such non-melodic rhythmic traditions develop. The ambient sound of public life, the music drifting from shops, cafes, and street performers would be replaced by the sounds of commerce, conversation, and nature alone. The absence of shared celebratory soundscapes would mean that the way communities express collective joy and mark important transitions would rely on entirely different sensory inputs and traditions. Number 9. Empty airwaves and silent stages. The entertainment industry vanishes. A vast portion of the global entertainment industry as we know it simply would not exist if music had never been invented. Think about the act of going to a concert, the anticipation, the roar of the crowd, the shared experience of seeing and hearing performers create sound. None of this would be part of human culture. Stadiums and arenas would not host touring bands or superstar singers. Small clubs and bars would not feature live musicians. The entire profession of being a musician, a singer, a composer, or a jockerser would be absent. There would be no charts tracking popular songs, no music awards celebrating artistic achievement in sound, and no subcultures forming around specific genres. The invention of radio broadcasting dramatically changed how people received information and entertainment. A significant portion of radio programming, historically and currently, is dedicated to playing music. Without music, radio would have evolved purely as a medium for news, talk shows, dramas, and storytelling. Concept of a discjockey or a radial playlist would be meaningless. Similarly, the recording industry, which began with cylinders and evolved through PiMic records, tapes, skeetus, and now digital streaming, would never have come into being. The personal act of choosing and listening to recorded sound for pleasure or emotional connection would be an alien concept. Devices like MP3 players or features on SoundLinks dedicated to music playback would not have been developed for that purpose. Film and television would also be profoundly different. Imagine watching a thrilling chase scene in a movie without a dramatic score heightening the tension. Picture a romantic moment on screen without tender melodies underscoring the emotion. Film composers and the art of the film score would not exist. Cubides and television shows would rely entirely on dialogue, sound effects from the depicted action, and silence to convey mood and advance narrative. Opening theme songs that make television shows instantly recognizable would be absent. Musicals, whether on stage in Broadway or West End productions, or as cinematic features, are an entire art form built around song and dance. Without music, the genre of the musical would be impossible. Opera, with its rich history of sung drama, would never have developed. Even video games, which often feature intricate scores and sound design to immerse players, would offer a very different and likely less emotionally resonant experience. The economic impact would be staggering, with countless jobs in performance, production, distribution, and technology related to musical entertainment never materializing. Leisure time would be filled with other activities, but the specific joy and emotional release found in listening to or creating music would be a void in human experience. Number 8. Hearts without a beat. Emotional landscapes redrawn. Music serves as a powerful tool for humans to express, process, and connect with their emotions. From the joyous strains that make us want to dance to the melancholic melodies that comfort us in sadness, sound organized into music has a direct line to our feelings. In a world where music was never invented, this crucial avenue for emotional navigation would be closed off. Individuals would need to rely entirely on other means to articulate their inner states, perhaps through more elaborate verbal expression, through visual arts like painting or sculpture, or through physical actions not tied to rhythmic sound. Consider the experience of heartbreak or grief. Many people turn to sad songs to find solace, to feel understood, or to allow themselves to fully experience their sorrow. Without this musical outlet, the grieving process might look very different. Perhaps there would be a greater emphasis on communal spoken rituals of mourning, or private journaling, or seeking comfort in nature, or quiet contemplation, the specific kind of catharsis that music can provide. A way of feeling an emotion intensely yet safely through sound would be unavailable. Similarly, expressing overwhelming joy or excitement often finds an outlet in upbeat, energetic music. Without it, celebrations of personal triumphs or happy occasions might feel less exuberant, or that exuberance would need to find purely physical or verbal forms. Romance and courtship are also deeply intertwined with music. Lovers share songs, dedicate melodies to one another, and dance to romantic tunes. These musical rituals help to build intimacy and express feelings that can sometimes be difficult to put into words. In a music-less world, courtship would rely on poetry, gift-giving, shared activities, and spoken declarations of affection. But the subtle, often unspoken language of shared musical taste and emotional resonance through song would be absent. The way people regulate their moods would also shift. Many use music to energize themselves for a task, to calm down after a stressful day, or simply to change their emotional state. Without this readily available tool, individuals might develop other mood-regulating techniques, perhaps involving physical exercise, meditation if it developed without chance, or specific social interactions. Collective emotional experiences fostered by music, the sense of unity at a concert, the shared sorrow at a funeral dirge, which wouldn't exist as such, the collective joy of a festival anthem would be missing. Human emotional life would undoubtedly continue, rich and complex, but it would lack one of its most versatile and universally understood languages. The subtle nuances of feeling that music can capture and convey might find less direct or less potent forms of expression. Number 7. Lost rhythms of belief, spiritual and religious practices transformed. Across the globe and throughout history, music has been an integral component of spiritual and religious life. From the soaring hymns in a cathedral to the meditative chants in a monastery, from the devotional call to prayer to the rhythmic drumming in indigenous rituals. Sound organized as music often serves to connect individuals to the divine, to foster a sense of community among believers, and to elevate the spirit. If music were never invented, the very fabric of religious and spiritual practice would be fundamentally altered. Worship services in many faiths would be noticeably quieter and different in texture. Christian services would lack hymns, gospel music, choir performances, and organ accompaniment. Jewish synagogues would be without the chanting of prayers, nigunim, or celebratory songs. Islamic calls to prayer, adhan, often delivered with a melodic quality, might be purely spoken declarations, and religious gatherings would not feature the sung praise, nasheeds, found in some traditions. Hindu temples, often filled with the sounds of bhajans, devotional songs, and kirtan, call and response chanting, would rely solely on spoken mantras, prayers, and discourses. Buddhist practices involving chanted sutras or mantras would either be spoken or would have developed a different, non-melodic, rhythmic quality. Collective experience of raising voices together in song, which can create powerful feelings of unity and spiritual uplift, would be absent from religious gatherings. Rituals marking sacred times or life passages, often accompanied by specific music, would need different forms. Funerary rites might involve spoken eulogies and prayers, but would lack the solemn dirges or comforting hymns that help express grief and hope. Celebratory religious festivals would be devoid of their traditional songs, changing their characteristic atmosphere. Meditation practices that utilize sound, such as chanting or listening to calming melodies, would either not exist or would focus on silence or natural sounds. The transmission of religious teachings and stories, sometimes embedded in sacred songs and hymns, would rely exclusively on oral recitation or written texts. The architecture of sacred spaces, sometimes designed with acoustics in mind to enhance musical resonance, might have evolved differently. While faith, prayer, and community would undoubtedly still be central to religious life, the specific experiential dimension that music provides, its ability to evoke awe, facilitate contemplation, express devotion, and unite congregations in shared sound, would be a profound absence. Number 6. The unsung stories. Oral traditions and cultural memory falter. Before widespread literacy, and even alongside it, oral traditions were the primary means by which cultures preserved their histories, myths, laws, genealogies, and collective wisdom. Music, with its memorable melodies and rhythmic structures, has always been a powerful mnemonic device, aiding in the retention and transmission of vast amounts of information across generations. Epic poems, folk ballads, and traditional story songs have served as living archives of cultural identity. In a world without the invention of music, the nature and efficacy of these oral traditions would be drastically different. Storytellers would rely solely on the power of spoken narrative, without the ability to set tales to tunes that make them easier to remember and more engaging to hear. The great epics of the world, like Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, which were likely performed with musical accompaniment, or the Indian Mahabharata and Ramayana, which have strong sung traditions, would have been transmitted purely as spoken word. This might have meant shorter, less complex narratives, or the development of highly sophisticated rhetorical and poetic devices, even beyond what we know, to aid memory. The role of figures like the West African griot, who combines history, storytelling, poetry, and music, would be fundamentally altered, their performances stripped of their instrumental and vocal melodies. Folk songs that carry tales of local heroes, historical events, or moral lessons would not exist. Instead, communities would need to develop other robust methods for ensuring that important cultural knowledge wasn't lost over time, perhaps through more formalized systems of apprenticeship for oral recitation, or a greater reliance on visual aids like carvings or paintings if these developed narrative capacities. The very act of communal remembering would change. Singing traditional songs together at gatherings reinforces shared history and values. Without this, other forms of communal recitation or reenactment might have become more prominent. The emotional impact of historical narratives might also be different. A sung ballad about a tragic battle can evoke a deeper emotional response and make the event more memorable than a purely factual spoken account. The loss of this musical dimension could mean that cultural memories are held with less emotional resonance, or are more susceptible to fading over time. Children, who often learn about their culture's stories and values through simple songs and rhymes, would need to acquire this knowledge through spoken tales or direct instruction alone. The vibrant tapestry of human culture, rich with sung stories and musical traditions that define ethnic, regional, and national identities, would be woven with fewer and perhaps less colorful threads. Preservation of the past would be a more challenging and potentially less engaging endeavor. Number 5. Playgrounds without jingles. Childhood development and education altered. Music plays a surprisingly significant role in early childhood, from the moments before birth through the first years of schooling. Lullabies, nursery rhymes, and simple children's songs are not just entertainment. They are tools for soothing, bonding, language acquisition, and cognitive development. If music had never been invented, the landscape of childhood and early education would be noticeably different. The earliest interactions between caregivers and infants often involve song. Lullabies, with their gentle melodies and soothing rhythms, are a near universal method for calming babies and lulling them to sleep. Without music, parents and caregivers would rely on rocking, shushing sounds. If these developed rhythmically without melodic context or soft speech, but the specific calming power of a sung melody would be absent, this could impact infant sleep patterns and the bonding experience that shared singing can foster. Nursery rhymes and playful children's songs are fundamental to early language development. Their repetitive structures, rhythms, and rhymes help children learn new words. In a world without these songs, language acquisition might follow a different trajectory, possibly relying more heavily on spoken stories, direct conversation, and perhaps rhyming poetry, if that art form developed independently of song. Educational settings for young children frequently use songs to teach concepts like the alphabet, numbers, days of the week, or even social skills like sharing. The ABC song is a prime example. Without these musical aids, teachers would need to employ other methods for rote memorization and engagement, such as chants, if rhythm developed without melody, call and response spoken phrases, or more visual and kinesthetic activities. Play itself would be different. Many children's games, both traditional and modern, are accompanied by songs or chants. Think of Ring Around the Rosie or the Hokey Pokey. These musical games help with coordination, social interaction, and following directions. Without them, children's play might be less structured by shared auditory cues and more reliant on improvisation or purely physical games. The emotional development of children could also be affected. Songs can help children learn to identify and express emotions. Happy songs, sad songs in a simple context, and playful songs provide a vocabulary for feelings. Without this, emotional literacy might be cultivated through different storytelling or dramatic play. The absence of music in early life would remove a joyful, engaging, and developmentally supportive element from the experience of growing up. Number 4. Marching to a different drummer, or none at all. Identity, unity, and protest, unvoiced. Music has a profound ability to forge identity, unite groups, and give voice to movements. From national anthems that stir patriotic feeling to protest songs that rally a cause, from the distinct sounds that define subcultures to the martial rhythms that coordinate armies, music shapes how people see themselves and their place in the world. In a world devoid of music, these powerful tools for cohesion and expression would be missing, fundamentally altering how communities and movements form and assert themselves. National identity is often powerfully expressed through a national anthem. The act of thousands singing their anthem together at a sporting event or a state ceremony creates a potent sense of shared belonging. Without anthems, nations would rely on flags, spoken pledges, or other symbols to foster patriotism. But the unique, emotionally charged unity created by collective song would not exist. Military organizations throughout history have used music, fife and drum corps, bugle calls, marching songs to coordinate troop movements, signal commands, and boost morale. Without martial music, armies would rely on shouted orders, visual signals, or perhaps purely percussive, non-melodic, rhythmic signals for battlefield communication and cohesion. The stirring, often intimidating sound of a marching band or a battle hymn would be absent from the theater of conflict. Social and political movements have frequently harnessed the power of song to spread their message, build solidarity, and inspire action. Protest songs can encapsulate complex ideas in memorable forms, becoming anthems for change. "We Shall Overcome" became synonymous with the civil rights movement. Countless other songs have fueled anti-war movements, workers' rights, campaigns, and calls for social justice. Without music, these movements would rely on speeches, slogans, pamphlets, and visual symbols like posters and banners. While powerful in their own right, these methods lack the unique ability of song to emotionally connect large numbers of people and create a portable, easily shared expression of a movement's ideals. Subcultures, particularly among youth, often coalesce around specific genres of music. Punk, hip-hop, goth, and countless other scenes are defined as much by their sound as by their fashion and ideologies. Music provides a badge of identity and a shared language for these groups. Without it, subcultures might form around other shared interests, literature, art styles, philosophical ideas, but the instant, visceral connection provided by a shared musical taste would be gone. The ways in which groups assert their distinctiveness and strive for unity or change would be fundamentally reshaped, lacking a powerful, unifying, and emotionally resonant voice. Number 3. The stillness of motion, dance, and physical expression, reimagined. Connection between music and dance is ancient and profound. Across cultures, rhythmic sound has inspired and accompanied movement, from sacred temple dances to joyous folk dances, from elegant ballets to spontaneous club dancing. Dance is often a physical response to the rhythm, melody, and emotional content of music. If music had never been invented, the very concept and practice of dance, as we understand it, would be radically different if it existed in recognizable forms at all. Many forms of dance are intrinsically linked to specific musical rhythms and structures. Ballet, for example, is choreographed to classical scores with movements precisely timed to the music. Folk dances often have traditional tunes that dictate their steps and patterns. Social dancing, whether it's a waltz, a tango, salsa, or freestyle dancing at a party, is almost always a response to musical cues. Without music, what would motivate and structure these forms of movement? Perhaps rhythmic movement traditions would develop based on percussive sounds alone, clapping, stomping, or the use of non-melodic percussion instruments, if these developed for rhythmic rather than melodic purposes. Or perhaps structured group movements would be cued by spoken commands or visual signals. However, the improvisational, emotionally expressive movement that music so often inspires would lack its primary catalyst. Recreational and fitness activities that involve dance would also be transformed. Dance fitness classes like Zumba or aerobic sessions that are synchronized to high-energy music would either not exist or would have to be structured around some other form of rhythmic cueing, perhaps repetitive spoken counts or purely visual demonstration. The joy of simply moving one's body to a beat, a common human experience, would be absent. Ritualistic and ceremonial dances, which often serve spiritual or storytelling purposes in various cultures, are frequently performed to specific chants or musical accompaniments. Without music, these rituals would either be purely spoken dramas, or the movements themselves would have to carry the entire narrative and emotional weight, perhaps cued by a leader or by an internal non-auditory rhythm. The development of professional dance as a performance art would be severely impacted. Choreographers would have no scores to interpret, and dancers would have no musical landscape to inhabit with their movements, while human beings would still move, express themselves physically, and engage in coordinated group activities. The rich, diverse, and often transcendent world of dance, as a response to and dialogue with music, would be a vast, silent space in human culture. Physical expression would find other avenues, but the specific art form and social activity of dance, fueled by melody and rhythm, would be an unwritten chapter. Number 2. The silent hum of labor. Work, focus, and daily rhythms disrupted. Throughout history, music and rhythmic sound have been companions to human labor. Work songs helped to coordinate effort, alleviate boredom, and create a sense of camaraderie among workers engaged in repetitive or strenuous tasks. In modern times, many people use background music to help them focus, to make mundane chores more palatable, or to create a certain atmosphere in workplaces and commercial establishments. The absence of music would subtly but significantly alter the soundscape of work and daily routines. In pre-industrial societies, and even in some manual labor settings today, work songs were a common feature. Sailors used sea shanties to synchronize their movements when hauling ropes or raising anchors. Agricultural workers used field hollers or group songs to pace their planting or harvesting. Railroad workers, miners, and others in physically demanding jobs often developed their own rhythmic calls and songs. These weren't just for entertainment. They served a practical purpose in coordinating collective effort and maintaining a steady rhythm which could increase efficiency and safety. Without music, such coordination would rely on shouted commands, percussive signals like a hammer striking a spike, if that rhythm was intentionally shared, or simply visual cues. The monotony of repetitive labor would also be harder to endure, without the distraction or emotional lift that a song could provide. In contemporary office environments, factories, or for individuals working or studying from home. Music is often used as a tool for concentration or mood management. Some listen to instrumental pieces to help them focus, while others use upbeat tunes to stay energized. Without this option, individuals would rely solely on silence, the ambient sounds of their environment, or perhaps white noise generators, if the technology for sound manipulation developed for other reasons. The ability to curate a personal auditory environment to enhance productivity or well-being would be diminished. Commercial spaces like shops, restaurants, and cafes frequently use background music to create a specific ante, to encourage customers to linger or to make the experience more pleasant. A world without music would mean these spaces would be filled only with the sounds of conversation, commerce, and machinery. The subtle influence of music on consumer behavior and perceived atmosphere would be absent. Even mundane daily chores, like cleaning the house or cooking, are often accompanied by music to make them more enjoyable. Without this, the rhythm of daily life might feel flatter for some, lacking those small, self-created moments of auditory pleasure that can break up routine. The soundtrack to human endeavor, whether in organized labor or personal tasks, would be significantly quieter and less varied. Number 1. Ecos of uninvented tools, technological and creative pathways unexplored. The invention and evolution of music have spurred remarkable technological and creative developments. The desire to create, capture, reproduce, and share music has driven innovation in instrument making, acoustics recording technology, and sound engineering. A world where music was never invented would not only lack music itself, but also the vast array of tools, technologies, skills, and even scientific understandings that have grown around it. Craft of instrument making is an art form in itself, spanning millennia and cultures. From the simplest flutes and drums to complex orchestral instruments like violins and pianos, and modern electronic synthesizers, humans have ingeniously manipulated materials to produce a vast range of timbres and pitches. Without the impulse to create musical sound, this entire lineage of craftsmanship and technological development would not exist. There would be no luthiers meticulously grafting stringed instruments, no piano builders, no drum makers, no designers of wind instruments. The specialized knowledge of materials, acoustics, and fine mechanics associated with these crafts would be absent. The development of sound recording technology was revolutionary, initially driven by the desire to capture and replay speech, but quickly embraced for music. Thomas Edison's phonograph, Emil Berliner's gramophone, and subsequent innovations like magnetic tape, Chi-mole LPs, compact discs, and digital audio formats all owe a significant part of their development and popularization to music. Without music, the trajectory of audio technology would have been very different, perhaps focused solely on voice recording for dictation or archival purposes, and likely far less advanced or widespread. Industries built around high fidelity, audio reproduction speakers, amplifiers, headphones, and sophisticated playback systems would be vastly diminished or oriented towards different non-musical applications. The science of acoustics, the study of sound, has also benefited from the demands of music. The design of concert halls and opera houses requires a deep understanding of how sound travels, reflects, and resonates to create optimal listening experiences. This knowledge would be less developed. Furthermore, the very skills associated with musicianship, fine motor control for playing instruments, highly developed oral skills for discerning pitch and rhythm, the ability to improvise and compose, the understanding of harmony and counterpoint. These specific talents and disciplines would not have been cultivated. Professions of sound engineer, music producer, and acoustician would not exist in their current forms. Creative energies that humans have poured into composing, performing, and technically perfecting musical expression would have sought other outlets, but the specific technological and artistic landscape shaped by our enduring relationship with organized sound would remain an uncharted, silent territory.